What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and today we have our top 10 lessons learned video where we are going to talk about all of the fantasy football lessons learned and takeaways that we saw from week 11 and apply them moving forward to week 12. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I got a little sick over the weekend, just a little bit under the weather. I don't know if it's like cold, flu, allergies, whatever, but I'm not feeling the best. I'm going to be honest. 10 lessons learned. It's really more like 7 and then the rookie wide receiver report. But the rookie wide receiver report has almost 10 takeaways in itself every week. So you guys get bonus stuff all the time. Bear with me. As always, if you enjoy, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like. Let's go.
Like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm frozen. She gon' let me.
All right, now our first lesson learned here is the Calvin Ridley, Zay Jones splits were for real. Now, when I first brought this up, people were saying, Ron, you're out of your mind. Causation doesn't equal correlation. This is nonsense. Okay, it doesn't really matter. Well, here's the thing. It's not, correlation versus causation, it's a good argument, right? Because just sort of cherry-picking splits for Calvin Ridley isn't the most, how can I say this? It's not the best practice possible, right? Like, you shouldn't just cherry-pick random samples, but in my eyes, it matters because Zay Jones plays a very particular wide receiver role, or he plays the X wide receiver role. I'm not a film guy by any means, but in most setups, you're going to have your X wide receiver that's like a physical outside perimeter wide receiver, think like a DeAndre Hopkins, but in lesser offenses where you don't have that true number one, that's going to be your Gabriel Davis, your Zay Jones. I'm trying to think of some other guys that sort of fit that role, but yeah, Zay Jones, Gabriel Davis, just like a big physical wide receiver that plays on the perimeter, usually sort of running streaks, contested catches. Mike Evans, of course, would be another one. Then you have like your slot flanker. That's going to be like what a Calvin Ridley would be. Someone that can kind of just go all over the field, run routes however they may choose. And you have your slot receiver, which is very simple there. Calvin Ridley has been sort of forced to go from his usual Calvin Ridley role, or I guess you can kind of put your smooth operators of the world like Garrett Wilson as your flanker role type of wide receivers. I want to say that you call that a Z, but you would have to move from there to X wide receiver where you're running a lot of just like clear out routes. George Pickens would be another one, just like clear out streaks, go routes, a lot of kind of clearing out to open up things underneath. And that's not really Calvin Ridley's role. It's what he would have to step up and do in games without Zay Jones. Well, we get Zay Jones back. We now have a 4-game sample in games with Zay Jones, and Calvin Ridley's looking like his old self in games with Zay Jones here. And honestly, the whole offense just clicks better with Zay Jones. We saw Trevor Lawrence. It was like his first big game in weeks, it felt like, for Trevor Lawrence. And Calvin Ridley in 4 games with Zay Jones, weeks 1, 2, 5, and 11, you have 20 points per game, 17.5 expected points per game. Expected points per game is just based on your ADOT, your targets, red zone targets, how many points should you be putting up. So the volume checks out. He's not just getting lucky here. 2.47 yards per run. That's amazing. 24% target per run. That's amazing. 78.3 PFF receiving grade. That's solid. Anything over 80 is elite. 78.3 is hovering on elite status here. And then 6 games without, it all plummets down. 7.5 points per game, 10.3 volume, 1.05 yards per out run, 16.5% targets per out run, 57.3 PFF grade is really bad. But you can see I have on the bottom of this graphic as well, or not graphic, but this tweet, the 2020 Ridley, the last time we saw Ridley actually be a good wide receiver in the NFL, he had very similar stats here with like 18.8 points per game, 16.5 expected. It looks a lot like the 4 games with Zay Jones. 2.44 yards per out run is about right on par, 24% target per out run, right on par, and then mid-80s PFF grade. So I'm not saying he's as good as he was in 2020, but I don't think that he's quite as washed as we all sort of thought. So I think that this was just a reaffirmation, if you will, that with Zay Jones, this offense just clicks a lot better, especially for Calvin Ridley. So moving forward in any games that Zay Jones is active in, Calvin Ridley to me is a top 24 wide receiver rest of season. I know that things were getting pretty bleak there for a second. When he came out of the other side of the bye, I think he had like 1 or 2 targets for like 0 yards. He comes out here in this game, Calvin Ridley, and he gives you 9 targets, 7 catches, 103 yards, and 2 touchdowns. His first 100-yard receiving game since week 5. So Calvin Ridley, that's very fun. I think week 5 as well was with Zay Jones. So he has been an absolute monster in games with Zay Jones. So just something to note here. Now, we just brought up George Pickens, but this is tough. All right, first of all, Kenny Pickett is awful. Kenny Pickett, and now I feel the pain, man. As a Jets fan, I've been through this my entire life. Kenny Pickett is your quintessential Mark Sanchez, Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson, of just a guy who, I mean, Zach Wilson's a whole other league. I would call it more Mark Sanchez and Sam Darnold, where he's not worst quarterback in the NFL, but it's just very clear he is never going to elevate an offense or elevate a franchise. He is simply going to be a passenger to a good defense and run game. And that's pretty brutal to spend the first-round pick on that guy. Kenny Pickett, to me, it's very clear he is not the franchise QB. I don't think that he really has much of a future in this league. I think that he's honestly a worse version of like your Mitch Trubisky's of the world. It is really not good when it comes to Kenny Pickett. Now, of course, he played the Browns defense this week, but there's just like routine times where he's just like throwing a ball anywhere past the first down marker, just not accurate. I'm telling you, he came out with small hands. People are like, oh, small hands don't matter, dude. The small hands and the combination of wearing two gloves, we're pretty nerdy and evidence-based on this channel, but if you have both gloves on and like the tiniest hands in the world, that just doesn't scream franchise QB to me. You know, I know it's like caveman math, but it just doesn't scream franchise quarterback, build the team around this guy. But yeah, man, I mean, this was bad. I mean, he didn't complete a single pass, like I think like he had a couple that were right at the first down marker, but it's bad, man. Nothing over the middle of the field either. They're scared to let him throw there because you're going to have, linebackers and things lurking around. It's just all strictly outside the numbers. A lot of stuff behind the line of scrimmage. 15 of 28, 106 passing yards on 28 attempts. Now, again, the caveat is this is the Browns defense, but this is what the Kenny Pickett show has been even just the last few weeks. So if we look the week before this, he played the Packers where he gave you 23 attempts, 14 completions, 126 yards. Before that versus Tennessee, 19 for 30, 160 yards and a touchdown. He hasn't gone over 200 passing yards since week 7 versus the Rams, man. It's just really not good. I have no words of encouragement for the Steelers or what this kind of looks like. They're always going to be this 500 team that's never in the mix to get a good quarterback. So I don't have an answer. The thing that also is a bummer is that ever since Deontay Johnson came back, we've been getting win sprint George Pickens, where you can see weeks 5 and week 7, he's all around the formation running, crossers and slants and posts and being asked to do more than just be an outside wide receiver in weeks 5 and week 7, where he had over 100 receiving yards in those games. Those were games without Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson back in the mix, Pat Freiermuth back in the mix, and that means George Pickens is back to his field stretcher, decoy, X-wide receiver role, which is brutal. Especially Pickens is the last guy that I'd want to run as a decoy. He just seems like a guy who'd be fed up with that very quickly. But you can see, all of his routes. I guess week 11 he had that was just after the catch. The green part of that route over the middle was just after the catch there. Like everything he's doing is downfield, just a lot of like comebacks to the outside. It's just not great. So I feel for George Pickens. It sucks, but he is somebody that is now just like a pretty desperation flex in games with Deontay Johnson and Freiermuth and Kenny Pickett, of course. Now, on the other side of that game, I kind of just wanted to recap what the Donovan Peoples-Jones, but I mean Dorian Thompson-Robinson, just kind of what that experience was like here. This is not good. Now, again, Steelers defense is pretty good. But turning 43 attempts into 165 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, 1 pick, and a minus 11.5% completion percentage over expected. That's just based on your receivers drops and your ADOT. Like what should your completion percentage be? Minus 11.5% is absolutely brutal. This is the most insane thing I've ever seen. Like, this is a crazy looking passing chart where he had genuinely, I guess, like 3 to 4 passes, or I guess like 5 passes past the 10-yard marker there. It's like it almost looks like a drawing. Like it looks like a constellation here of like a horse or something, just like 5 yards and below. It's a lot of behind line of scrimmage stuff. So everything you're getting with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, they won this game or whatever, but everything you're going to get is right in front of you. Is really what I'm trying to say. It's not going to be airing it out downfield. It is interesting they pass the ball so much. They've been a very up-tempo team, this Browns team, which I think is interesting. He only had 3 rush attempts for 20 yards, which is weird because Dorian Thompson-Robinson was like essentially a poor I wouldn't even call it that, but he was a scrambling QB in college. I want to say he had like 12 rushing touchdowns in his final year. So weird usage for him. 40-plus pass attempts is not the way I would go, but it is interesting for Dorian Thompson-Robinson. I don't think that he'll ever be startable, but it is interesting that the pace didn't slow down at all with Stefanski here. Now, if we just look, I think this is just from this week with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, but you can see here, man, like We're talking the only quarterback that he beat out this week were the Jets quarterback, Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle. Outside of that, he was one of the stone worst QBs in the NFL based on EPA, so that's just per play efficiency, and then completion percentage over expectation. So he was not good. But again, I mean, maybe it gets better, but it's just sort of a state of the union. The quarterback play is not good for the Browns, and that trickles down to your receiving counterparts. But the interesting part is that it's actually kind of a good thing for David Njoku. These lesser quarterbacks, guys who aren't Deshaun Watson, David Njoku's been a big beneficiary because of it. David Njoku had 15 targets in this game. Now, he only turned into 7 catches for 56 yards, but 15 targets is a crazy amount of volume, and you'd have to imagine 15 targets is going to get you more than what he had this game. And even if not, he's been over 10 PPR points every game since week 7. And you can see, this is just on the left-hand side of the screen. I want to take the Amari Cooper one down for a second, but you can see 8.7 points per game with Deshaun Watson, and then 11 plus with P.J. Walker and with Dorian Thompson-Robinson, with the most volume coming from Dorian Thompson-Robinson. Now, of course, with DTR, the efficiency is not going to be there, but with these backup quarterbacks, it's actually a pretty big boost for David Njoku, because I imagine, he's operating before the 10-yard marker. He's like a big safe target for them. So David Njoku is fringe top 8 to top 10 rest of season tight end. You can pretty much start every week regardless of the matchup. So that's actually very good for anybody out there that has David Njoku. The bad part is for Amari Cooper, this is not good. 17.6 points per game in games with Deshaun Watson is really impressive. 11.3 with P.J. Walker, and then 5 points per game with DTR. At least there was 15.8 expected points per game with P.J. Walker is nice, but we'll see. Maybe they go back to P.J. Walker. I think that with P.J. Walker, Amari Cooper would be startable, but in games with DTR, Amari Cooper is somebody that is like Pickens with Pickett. We're talking desperation wide receiver 4/flex play when it comes to those players. Now, our fourth takeaway from week 11 of fantasy football, we have the Breece Hall usage without Michael Carter. Now, I still have my Jets sweatshirt from yesterday on. I mean, it's just it's a sad time. I don't even really want to get into what the Jets team has become and just kind of the cruelty that has been this season for us. But we have Michael Carter getting cut, right? And Michael Carter's biggest issue is that he took up those 43% long down and distance snap. Now, by the way, this entire graphic is from the utilization report over on My Fantasy Life. They do great work over there, kind of breaking down game by game the usage trends. Now, I wouldn't read into the 61% snap share for Breece Hall. There was garbage time, right? Fourth quarter, this game was out of hand. There was like 32-6 at one point. They took Breece Hall out of this game. But it's interesting to see he had 100% of the 2-minute drill snaps, which is great. That's an improvement over what he was splitting with Michael Carter. He did give some of the third downs with Dalvin Cook. You can see in the bottom right the Dave Richard tweet here. 5 out of 8 third downs were Dalvin Cook's. Now, that's not great, but it's also not all that problematic if it's going to be like an 80 to 20% split here. With Breece Hall having the 2-minute drill and inside the 10 snaps. So Dalvin Cook takes some third down snaps and some breather touches between the 20s. It's not the end of the world. You had Abinaconda come in, but that wasn't until late in the game. It was kind of garbage time at that point, but Abinaconda was in the mix. So Breece Hall, this is huge. 82% of the snaps would have been a season high. That was, again, before garbage time happened. So Breece Hall has a better role without Michael Carter, which pretty much just reaffirms what we were looking for in a game without Michael Carter. You had 16 opportunities for Breece Hall that turned into 18.3 PPR points, 3 opportunities for Cook, 3 opportunities for Abinaconda. Breece Hall has a very nice role for fantasy football. Now, our fifth takeaway here, as I look towards my water, dude, the fade is crazy. I went out and got a fade, a little haircut over the weekend. God bless that boy Danny. But our fifth takeaway is, like, they didn't win that game, and the Bears haven't been good, dude, but Justin Fields has looked good, man. Justin Fields has looked good. If we look here, the passing chart, this is from NFL Next Gen Stats, 16 of 23, 169 passing yards. It's not anything crazy, but a touchdown plus 15.5% completion percentage over expectation is amazing. He had that deep bomb, almost a 50-yard touchdown pass. I mean, he's completing things past the sticks. I think, that's only like 2 passes behind the line of scrimmage. Justin Fields looked good. He passed the eye test. I don't know. If you want to hold against him, he had the late game sack that wasn't great, but you had a lot of Eberflus decisions that just kind of gave this game back to the Lions. I can't pin any of it on Justin Fields, really. He looked great through the air. He looked great on the ground as well. He had 18 rushes for 108 yards on top of this passing day. And you can see, I mean, this is a RBSDM.com EPA per play and completion percentage over expectation charts. So just QB efficiency and your completion percentage over expectation. Just, ideally the best quarterbacks are in the top right? Brock Purdy and Trevor Lawrence. Probably the best two quarterback performances of the week. They're in the top right. But Justin Fields is also in the top right next to CJ Stroud and Lamar Jackson. He had a great week 11, Justin Fields. And I think that's kind of underrated in terms of just kind of the result of that game. He looked good, and that also led to more volume, more efficiency for DJ Moore. This is from JJ Zachariason here. He said, Fields ran the ball 18 times today. That's the most from any quarterback this season. And it's the most rush attempts from a quarterback since November of last year when Justin Fields had 18 rush attempts. So just from like a fantasy perspective, 18 rush attempts for a quarterback is absurd. For health reasons, we probably prefer that to be lower, which is a good sign that he's this machine for fantasy football. I mean, that is a running back's workload, and then he's also throwing through the air. He ended up with like 20 plus fantasy points. He was a QB1 on the week, Justin Fields. Wheels all the way up. And then also for DJ Moore, he saw a 40% target share, marking a season high. He finished as a top 20 wide receiver for the first time since his huge blow-up game against Washington in Week 5. So just big dubs all around. Justin Fields looks good. I think DJ Moore should be fine moving forward with Justin Fields playing as long as he's healthy. And then on top of that, you have the backfield split, which is a little bit more tricky here, where you had Deonta Foreman start the game. He was like the starting running back. He goes down. Herbert is the clear guy. The clear main guy, and then you have Roschon Johnson as the passing down back with 6 of 7 third down snaps. So how this works out when we get Deontay Foreman healthy, I really don't know. But we had 18 touches for Khalil Herbert, 6 touches for Roschon Johnson, and 6 touches for Deontay Foreman. I think in any case, it is Khalil Herbert 1A, Deontay Foreman 1B, with Roschon as your passing down back. And probably only Khalil Herbert is a confident start, and then Deontay Foreman, you're praying for a touchdown. So if anybody's kind of curious on how that running back room breaks down, that's how it would have it. And then we have our 6th takeaway, which is just the Carolina Panthers backfield, which, again, this is from the utilization report over on My Fantasy Life. You can see things are back to even, right? We're in Week 9, it was a 65% snap share to Chuba Hubbard, 25% towards Miles Sanders. That has evened out here, where Week 10 was 47% Hubbard, 40% Sanders, then 46% Sanders, 49% Hubbard. So now they're right about even at this point. You had 12 touches for Miles Sanders, 6.2 PPR points, 12 touches for Hubbard, 8.5 PPR points. If it remains a clear split down the middle, neither of them are going to be high-end starters. They're both going to be like back-end RB3s, where when one of them's the main guy, that guy is going to be like a fringe top 24 running back. At this point, they're both kind of back-end RB3s moving forward and what's a dumpster fire offense. Now, our last thing we're going to talk about here, technically our 7th takeaway, but again, the rookie wide receiver report's going to have a bunch inside of it. Just don't you worry. We have the world famous rookie wide receiver report. Now, before we get into that, I did want to show you guys, we have an Underdog special. Of course, the rookie wide receiver report is sponsored by Underdog Fantasy, and we have some cool things going on here where they are doing a Turkey Day airdrop, where all you have to do is participate in the Pick'em lobby over on Underdog Fantasy. If you're new to Underdog Fantasy, use promo code RON to match your first deposit up to $100. I'll put a nice little ticker on the bottom of the screen, but I'll have a link in the description and the comment section down below. If you click, it'll take you to Underdog Fantasy. It'll use promo code RON. It'll match your first deposit up to $100. And all you have to do is go to Underdog Fantasy. You hop on there, you make a pick'em slip where you just go higher or lower on fantasy points, rushing yards, passing yards. If you like NFL or if you like NBA, I think they even have college basketball. I know the Maui Invitational tips off tonight, which I'm super excited for. I love college basketball as well. I think you can even go higher or lower on like Zach Edey rebounds if you wanted to. It's one of the most crazy markets out there to sort of mess around with. So make sure you check out the Underdog Pick'em lobby because, again, they will be airdropping $300,000 across thousands of customer accounts. To be eligible to receive a bonus cash airdrop, all you need to do is make a Pick'em entry between now and the 23rd at 5:30 p.m. Eastern. So what is it today? It's the 20th. So you have pretty much until the day before Thanksgiving, and then on Thanksgiving, they're going to be airdropping these out to a bunch of people. $300,000 across thousands of customer accounts. And on top of that, there's going to be 3 different airdrops. And I think there's going to be something, keep an eye on these players on Thursday as well. I imagine something to do with these players will factor into the airdrop. So something that's pretty cool. You know, you'll just get free money in your account to mess around with either on drafts or other pick'em slips. But again, do that now to be eligible for it. Again, shout out Underdog Fantasy, the biggest sponsor of the Ron Stewart channel on YouTube. They keep the lights on during the dark times. All right, so what do we got here? We have the world famous rookie wide receiver report that I am trying to just fit onto the screen in a way that I am happy with, and that's not quite what I'm hoping for here. Yeah, I think that that'll be just fine. Let me just flash the Turkey Day $300,000 drop. And here's rookie wide receiver report. Now, I'm going to be honest, I didn't write notes for every single player. Again, I'm not feeling great. I don't mean to be a little baby about it. I mean, we're still recording and stuff. I just didn't feel like writing a 40-minute outline because I would just be coughing up an absolute lung by the end of this thing. But we have rookie wide receivers with 135 or more routes run, sorted by PFF grade. And we have a new column that we've been putting in here, percent change. So I just take the PFF grade that you had last week, PFF grade you have now. How much did your performance affect your overall PFF grade that week? On top of that, you have the week 9, week 10, week 11 route percentages. So just in terms of pass plays, how often you're running a route on those pass plays. Just a matter of like, are you involved in this passing offense per route, target per route run? Are you commanding targets? Are you being efficient with those targets, yards per route run? Then PFF grade, how are you looking on film to the boys over at PFF? Now, first up, we'll talk about Puka Nacua. Guy's a stud. 7 targets, 7 targets, 5 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown. He's still on track as like the rookie wide receiver 1 here with he leads the class in targets per route run, he leads the class in yards per route run, leads the class in PFF grade, and he's still somehow trending up. After that, you have Tank Dell. Tank Dell turned in his best game this season. And to me, I put him through. Now, everyone over on the Patreon has seen this. If you haven't, it should be in Ron's Stat Cave, is the channel on Discord. But I put this class through a couple weeks ago when we did the Dynasty Rankings update. I put this class through I have a rookie wide receiver year 2 projection model. So it takes into account your year 1 points per game, your yards per out run, PFF grade, on top of your prospect score from my prospect model. So even taking the fact that Tank Dell was not liked by my prospect model, again, he was a round 3 pick. He was like 5'7". No number analytical model is really going to like Tank Dell. I think he was also a JUCO transfer, so that's also going to muddy things up. And even with that ding on his profile, he's coming out the other side of this year 2 point per game projection model, which it pretty much just projects your expected points per game in year 2. And it just is a good way of kind of showing how bullish should we be on you in the future. And coming out of that, he is looking like your Amon-Ra St. Brown, Stephon Diggs, Tyreek Hill, day 3 guys who murder year 1 and are just like studs off the bat. So Tank Dell, to me, has already beaten all draft capital concerns, has beaten everything. He comes out here, 10 targets, 8 catches, 149 yards, a touchdown. He had the best grade of his season with a 91.0 receiving grade in that game, and that's what bumped his grade up 8% to 82.3. Anything over 80 in terms of PFF grade is elite. 82.3 is amazing. That puts him right on track with guys like Drake London, Chris Olave, Garrett Wilson. Really, really good stuff for Tank Dell. It's absolutely hilarious. You rarely, this has been one of the weirder wide receiver classes, man, where the guys who get that 80-plus score, in recent years have been Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, last year again, Drake London, Wilson, Olave, Mike Evans in the past, Odell Beckham. Like, these are all first-round picks. We're seeing guys go day 5, or I'm saying day 5, but day 3. I know Tank Dell's not a day 3 guy. I guess that was kind of a dumb thing I said there. He was a round 3 guy, Puka Nacua, but still, round 3 guys rarely make it and look this good this early. Like, I want to say Nico Collins was a round 3 guy. I don't know. Round 3 isn't like a death sentence for wide receivers, but it's not a great hit rate across the board. Tank Dell absolutely defying the odds here. Jaden Reed up next. We have Rashee Rice is on bye. He has Monday night game tonight. We have 2 guys on bye. But the next guy that stood out to me that I wanted to talk about was Jaden Reed here. He goes from 45% to 56%, back up to 79% route percentage-wise. So Jaden Reed is really climbing up the totem pole here. He looks good. 5 targets, 4 catches, 46 yards was solid. 18.8% target per run will do. 1.82 yards per run will do. PFF still kind of shortchanging with 69.7, but he's looking good to me. Dontavion Wicks is kind of a guy. I still don't really love him, but he's looking good. I mean, 18.6% target per run, 1.92 yards per run looks good, 3.7% change of PFF grade. Dontavion Wicks might be a guy, but I'm not sure. I mean, the per route stuff is good with Dontavion Wicks. Maybe he can kind of be this year's Romeo Dobbs, but he hasn't really done anything in terms of giving you like a startable week. Like maybe this week he did, but prior to that, nothing really to write home about. After that, I also wrote down Quentin Johnston. Quentin Johnston, man. I truly have nothing. He was awful in this game. He costed them a huge, like what could have been a 50-yard touchdown. He dropped it. That was the second time this year that he's dropped the ball with nothing but green in front of him. I don't know if he has the yips. I don't know what it is. I don't watch film. I understood that there was hands problems, but we've seen this before. Deontay Johnson had drop issues. Amari Cooper had drop issues. Some of the best wide receivers in the NFL had drop issues early on. It's really not all that uncommon. I didn't think it was going to be this bad. I thought that because respected guys in the film community, like Lance Zierlein, thought he was a first-round talent. The NFL thought he was a first-round talent and drafted him in the first round. So I figured if you're going to be a first-round wide receiver in the NFL, that Twitter gurus, seeing him drop balls, didn't know more than the NFL. I don't know if I stand corrected, but when it comes to the case of Quentin Johnston, I stand corrected. The hands were an issue. It's clearly an issue. He is not good at football. Now, I don't know. Maybe he rebounds and figures this thing out like a Devontae Adams did, but this is no good. 13.6% target per run, not good. It's 0.75 yards per run, awful. 58.3 PFF grade, that went down 4%, awful. Again, brutal drop. He's somewhere between Jalen Reagor and Josh Doxson, and it's really, really bad. Really bad. Quentin Johnston, not good. Outside of that, I also wrote down Trey Palmer. I don't know if you guys are interested about this guy. It's weird because I see him make plays on red zone every single week. He's making, like, Trey Palmer has like 90 spectacular catch, but kind of nothing else really going on for him. 12.7% target per run, not great. I mean, he's not efficient at all with 0.74 yards per run. PFF doesn't like him at all, 54.6. So to me, he's just a guy. I know that he's getting some hype in Dynasty. I don't know. I'm open to being corrected because, again, he's making some great plays in terms of like making highlight plays, but I guess like on a more routine basis, PFF and the per out stuff isn't all that impressed with Trey Palmer. And then our last guy is John Mingo. My goodness, the only wide receiver you can definitively say is worse than Quentin Johnston. John Mingo, he commanded 5 targets. He turned that into 1 catch for 6 yards. He's just the epitome of not being efficient. 0.67 yards per run, awful. Somehow his PFF grade went even lower down to 52.1. John Mingo, certified face planner, really, really not good for John Mingo. Now, that is going to do it for us today. Again, make sure you check out that Turkey Day airdrop. They will drop some money in your account. All you have to do, or I guess you'll get randomly selected. Who knows how many people are going to do it? If you do it, I think you'll have a good chance of getting it. But promo code Ron, if you're new to Underdog Fantasy, you can use it. It'll match your deposit up to $100, and you can hop on there, fill out a pick'em slip, and you immediately get entered into the Turkey Day $300,000 airdrop. Maybe you'll be one of the lucky few. I don't really know how much they're going to be putting in accounts, but I imagine it's going to be a lot of people getting money put in their account. So I would check it out, see what they have to offer over there. As always, if you enjoy, make sure down below, subscribe, leave a like, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like I'm